As far as I'm concerned, the purchase of a residential property in self-managed super is dead and buried. And let me tell you the reason for this right now. The fees and charges associated with setting up the fund and the interest rate of the fund means that none of your numbers are going to work unless you get your borrowings down to a 60% loan to value ratio. And if you do that, are you really making the best use of the money that's in the fund? Because if your gearing is so low, you're buying a property that's probably inferior. And it's for this reason that most property investors, even ones that have never bought a commercial property, are pivoting and buying their first commercial property as their self-managed super fund purchase. And the reason that they do this is because the numbers still work, even with the higher interest rates and fees and valuation fees, all the rest of it. The numbers still work really well to purchase a commercial property in your self-managed super at about a 70% loan to value ratio. Let me talk you through a case study of an actual client of mine who made this decision in the last couple of months and talk you through the reasoning as to why they made that decision. The Smiths. They had about $400,000 saved up in their self-managed super fund. We ran some math and numbers to look at what a residential purchase would look like. And then we run some math and numbers to look at what a commercial property purchase would look like. Now, based on the thought that the resi property would probably have a net return after expenses of about 3.7, maybe even 3.5%, and that they were able to use a buyer's agent and find a commercial property that had a net rent of about 6.3%, the numbers just stacked up so much better. Because they were looking at buying at a 70% loan to value ratio rather than a 60% loan to value ratio, they were able to stretch the purchase price up significantly more. And that then meant, based on the higher yield of the commercial property, they were getting a far greater return on their money. You fast forward for kind of 10 years, why would you do this? Or fast forward for 15 or 20 years. In your retirement, you want your self-managed super fund property to be all paid off and you to be ideally living on the rental income that it generates. If I can buy an $800,000 property as a residential property and live off 3% of 800,000, or I can buy a $1.2 million commercial property and live on, 7% of the 1.2, well then the latter is a much better deal. Hence why we pivot and we look for a commercial property purchase in self-managed super. Now, the Smiths had only ever bought residential property and they knew it back to front. They'd probably bought 6 or 7 properties and sold some over the period of time, but they were well and truly versed in residential. They knew zero about commercial. So here's a few things that we had to get their heads around to keep them moving forward. Number one, cost. When you buy in a commercial property, you're looking at valuation fees, you're looking at some pretty hefty lending, loan application fees, and also legal advice fees, and also fees in terms of reviewing leases for commercial properties and things like that. So number one, once you get your head around the higher rates and fees, but remember that that balances out because you're getting a higher yield, then you're in a good position to be able to move forward. The next thing that we had to get the head around is the value of a commercial property is not based on what other ones have sold for in the street or the complex or whatever. It is usually based on the rental return that you're going to receive for the property. So if you've got 2 identical properties sitting side by side and one of them is under rented and the other one has quite a strong lease in place, there could be on a valuation quite a discrepancy between the 2. So we had to get the Smiths from a mindset of looking at comparable sales and square meters of the properties that they're looking at purchasing to a combination of those things plus what is the lease in place? How much is the lease in place? How long does it run for? And who is the tenant? Once we got those things into the client's mind, then they were in a much better position to make a purchase. Now, even once you've got your head around these things, it's still sometimes not enough. So the majority of my clients that transition from residential to commercial will definitely have the assistance of a commercial buyer's agent in order to help them make their first property transaction. The commercial buyer's agent will make sure that when they enter into a purchase, there is a reasonable due diligence period and plenty of time for us to get our finance in place. The commercial buyer's agent forms a safety net, making sure that the property that you purchase is in line with the market value and also that the lease is in line with market value as well. So although these commercial buyer's agents can sometimes be a bit expensive, it's really insurance. It's a safety net making sure that you are not making a horrible decision. And considering that you've probably only bought a residential property and this is your first commercial, it's an insurance policy worth paying for. Let's have a look at the loan scenario of the Smiths. Purchased for just a dash over $1 million, got a property that has about a 6.5% net yield, which means they're collecting about $65,000 worth of rent per year net into their account. Tenant paying all outgoings. The loan that we obtained was at a 70% loan to value ratio. So we've got about $55,000 worth of interest there per year. So the property pays for itself and its interest costs. Their contributions coming in from their employers are what we're going to use along with that surplus to pay down this debt as quickly as possible. Did some rough forecasting and we think we'll probably have the loan all paid off, done and dusted within about 15 years. Perfect timing for them to retire and then draw through that rental income as a pension. Now, a lot of people really struggle to get the borrowing structure in their head for a self-managed super fund property. It's actually quite simple. Your super fund is the borrower. The members of the fund are going to guarantee it and say that it's all going to be okay and they're going to use the rental income to service the debt. The asset that you buy, you're going to hold in a separate entity to keep it separate from all of the other assets of your fund, and you're going to give a guarantee between the bare trust or the security custodian and the self-managed super fund that this property can be used as security against the loan, and once the loan's repaid, then the asset will move from the bare trust into the fund and it's all done and dusted. That's the structure that you're looking for when it all gets set up. Super fund, bare trust, members of the fund are going to be the guarantors. So if this sounds like something you want to know a little bit more about, put a comment below and we'll reach out, or there's a link to my calendar and you can book in directly with myself or one of my team to chat through your situation and how this could help and assist you in your stage of property investing.